I previously made a video about why I choose to raise my child in China, and while I have my reasons for doing so, I decided to have a chat with other expats who have made the same choice and try to get some more opinions of what it's like to raise your child in China as a foreigner. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Ursula. I am Dutch. I came to China about 13 years ago. I am a mom of two kids who were both born and raised in Hangzhou, China.
Hi, my name is Sarika. I am an Indian. I am living in China more than 5 years now. I have one kid. He is 3 years old and he born in China.
Hey, Nadine, and all you guys on YouTube. This is Ben Cubbage from Western China. I have lived in kind of the middle of nowhere on the Tibetan Plateau. This is my apartment here for the last 13 years. Moved here in 2010, and 13 years later, here we are still living on the Tibetan Plateau.
Hello, my name is Rhoda. I'm a Zimbabwean national. I've been living in China for the past 13 years. I live in Weihai, China. I'm a mom of an 8-year-old boy. My son was born here in China.
Why did you move to China?
So I came to China about 13 years ago. Me and my husband David were living in Sheffield, UK at the time, and out of the blue, I got an email asking for me to come to a job interview for a major fashion house in China. Now, at the time, I had my own fashion label. I'm a fashion designer. I wasn't looking for a job, but I was really curious. I'm like, hey, why the hell not? Let's go to London, let's do this interview and see what happens. So the next day, that's how quick it was. The next day, I packed up all my collection. We went to London. We did the interview with this Chinese fashion house. It was very intimidating, but by the end of the interview, the boss said, when you come to China, you will have a great time. And because she said when, I was like, did I just score the job on my first try? And yep, 2 weeks later, I got the call. I was chosen from like 35 applications. And 4 months later, we started our life in China.
Having lived in China for 13 years, my wife and I originally came here to start a backpacking business in the Himalayas. So we studied the language at a small university here called Qinghai. That's a province where we live, Qinghai Minzu Dashui. Studied for about 3 or 4 years, students to get the language. And then from there, we got a work visa registering our own business. So that's what we came here to do. And that's what we have been doing for the last decade or so, is running a travel business where we take people into the mountains of Tibet.
I first came here as an exchange student. There was an opportunity that was given to my company for students to come and study in China. I grabbed the opportunity and I moved to China to study. Apparently things went right. I met my husband. Well, I met my boyfriend then when I was in the uni, and fast forward things, we got married and we decided to stay in China. My husband is a Chinese national, hence we decided to settle in China.
How difficult was the decision to give birth in and raise your kids in China?
Okay, so a year and a half into this dream job in Hangzhou, China, I find out I am pregnant. And we had to make the major decision, are we gonna have the baby right here in China, or are we gonna go back to Holland or UK to have the baby? Now for me, I was like, why not have the baby here? I mean, there's a billion Chinese people here having babies all the time. I'm just one other person. I mean, we all work the same way, right? The baby has to come out the same way. So we decided to just do it here. Just do it here. And it was actually, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, because at the time my Chinese was still very poor. And we went to a Chinese hospital, not an international one, a Chinese hospital, and we did the whole shebang there. And in the end, it was the best decision that we made, because the care in the hospitals here is top notch. It was a little bit, I can't compare it to Holland, of course, because I never gave birth in Holland, but there is not a lot of privacy in the hospitals here in China. So I had to real fast get used to people coming in, taking selfies with me while I'm breastfeeding. Or even when I was giving birth, there was nurses with cameras taking pictures because the foreigner just gave birth in a Chinese hospital. So it was a little bit like giving birth in the zoo, but in the end, it was the best decision. We just go with the flow and it all came out really good.
So we decided to give birth to our kid here in China because when I come here I was already pregnant, so I decided to give birth here in China, and after that lockdown started. So yes, it's a complete different story. He's a lockdown baby.
My wife and I originally came over as just a married couple with no kids, and now we have a 9-year-old and 11-year-old who are all made in China but actually born. Our oldest was born in Texas, in America, where we're from. And then the second oldest, our son Bear, was actually born in Thailand. And Thailand has extremely good medical care, and you can birth a child for probably 25% of the cost of birthing in America or a Western country with really, really good medical care and at a very, very cheap price. So our kids were made in China, have a little barcode on them that says made in China, and but they're actually born in separate countries, but they have grown up their whole life in China.
My son was born here in China. My husband is Chinese, so getting married and deciding to live here, we didn't think much about where to give birth. So automatically my son was born here in China because this is his country. So I decided to be pregnant here. In fact, giving birth in China here was not by choice, since I already said my husband is a local. So it seemed to be the right thing to do. I didn't think much about my family and being away from my family, since I know his family was here.
What was your biggest concern about raising your child here?
So what is it like to raise your family here in China? Now, I really like it here in China. My kids like it here in China. I mean, they were born and raised here. They speak Chinese, they read Chinese, they write Chinese. And we just make sure that we speak our language at home. So I speak Dutch at home, David speaks English at home. So basically they get 3 languages for the price of 1. Then culture-wise, I mean, China has a very rich culture, and I really like how things are done here. I like how the elderly get all the respect. I like how the kids are very studious. I like the freedom that you have when you're out on the street. If you feel like you want to dance, you just dance. No one judges you. It's very open like that. And we're also very close to other countries like Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia. And every time we get a little holiday, we try and go explore these countries, see how they live, see how their cultures are. I think for the kids it's really important and really fun to see all these different places in the world. Now, the negative part of raising your kids here so far away from home is that you're far away from home. You're far away from your parents, you're far away from your aunties, and that kind of sucks. Yeah, you can fly back every year for the summer. It's great. You see them for a few weeks. It's great. But you know, when something happens, you're so far away, and you need to be ready to fly back like this when they need you. That's the one big concern I have. And that will probably be the factor that's going to make us move back eventually.
The biggest concern raising a child in China is that of language. You know, sometimes he don't understand the Chinese language, but he is learning. For us also it's a little difficult to understand the language. Apart from that, everything is good. If you know the local language, then it is the perfect country for you to live.
Probably our biggest concern in raising kids in China is you just don't quite have the exposure to nature as you would in America or a lot of Western countries. For us, we're really big hikers. We love the mountains. We love getting out to national parks and camping for a couple of days. And China's just super urban. Even for me, living in a really remote place, you can see I'm kind of here in an apartment complex. It's in a city. Everything's just kind of very concrete jungle in China. Even for us living in the far west, which is much less developed than the rest of the country, you can see it's still pretty urbanized. And so for Chinese, they're a very urban society, and they only in the last 10 years have they really started camping and hiking, and you just don't quite have the opportunities here in China to experience the wilderness as you would in a Western country. So that's kind of a downfall. Even, if Chinese are hiking, it tends to be kind of a concrete path or kind of a wooden path. There's very, very little access to wilderness here because things are kind of so almost over modernized or overdone as far as an urban setting.
My greatest concern about raising my child in China only came recently. Then for the past 7 years, I never really have a problem raising him here as a biracial child. I didn't have a lot of concern then, but some of the concerns are coming out now. That was it a good choice to have a child and raising a biracial child in China? Apart from something that comes with that, I think raising my son here in China was a good choice, looking at the availability of medical facilities, the safety and the health care. I think raising my child here in China was a good choice. I don't see any difficulty in that. Basic needs of a child is readily available here in China and not at a high cost. Like, I think it's really affordable to raise a child in China.
Do you think your child is better off in China versus your home country?
I believe raising my child here in China is a good decision. He is having a good life here because he go to the kindergarten. He have lot of friends from different countries. So in both countries are rich in culture, in tradition. They teach the same family values. So I don't think so we have any kind of difficulties here in China.
I would say yes. Despite there are some sacrifices being here. Obviously, we don't see our family as much. We're living in a culture that's not our own. Sometimes we can be stared at a lot as foreigners. Those are all can be negatives, but I'd say the positives definitely outweigh the negatives. And the positives are our kids get to grow up as kind of world citizens in a different culture, learning a new language and getting to expand their horizons. And I personally love that. That's what's kept us in China for 13 years with our family, as our kids have gone to international school and grown up in China. And that's kind of all they've known their whole life. And I'm thankful that they have a different perspective on language, people, culture, and know a lot about the world because of it.
In fact, I don't think raising my son in China here is better off than in my country. I think both countries, or even anywhere in the world, the environment is what matters a lot. But for me, I have been facing a lot of difficulties raising my child here currently, since he is in a primary school. I feel a lot of challenges right now. But then when he was still young, there were not so many problems, which I think it was better in terms of healthcare and safety. But now, as he approaches and as he has started going to school, I'm facing some challenges that I don't think I would face the same challenges if I were to raise him in Zimbabwe.
Did your child easily adapt to life in China?
So, did Freddie and Didi adapt easily to the Chinese life? The answer is yes, of course. They were born here. I actually think that for the first 3 years of their life, they didn't even realize that they were different looking, They just blend in so well with the Chinese kids. They have Chinese friends. They have so much fun together. And honestly, I've not even noticed any bullying or any racism. I mean, kids are just kids, right? They just having fun. So we have no problems with the kids blending in with the Chinese kids. It's actually, I'm very surprised that actually Freddie, for example, is one of the most popular kids in the whole school. I mean, he's the only foreigner together with Didi. They're the only two foreigners in the whole school. So that is really great.
Have our kids adapted to life in China? And to this, I'd say yes. I'd say they're more Chinese than they are American. My kids eat with chopsticks every day. They speak basically fluent Chinese to all the kids here in our apartment complex. And basically everything, life outside of our home is all 100% Chinese, except for their school and what we do in home. So they're quite adapted to being here. Was it difficult for them to adapt? Yes, it was. But I'd say they were quite young. They were 2 or 3 years old when they started kindergarten and pre-kindergarten. So it was a little bit tough to throw them in as the only white face in a school full of 300, 400 Chinese faces who all kind of looked the same and had the same hair and the same eyes. So they definitely felt a little bit, shall we say, ostracized, or maybe even just kind of different from everyone else in the class. And that probably felt weird, but they were young. And so they adapted quite quickly, even though it was hard. I do remember my son Bear. He was in his little kindergarten class. He's the only white kid in the whole class, the only American in the whole place. And he just kind of sat in the corner for 2 or 3 months and didn't really talk to anyone, kind of just played with blocks. But eventually he kind of integrated into the class, integrated into community, and now he loves it. A lot of his local friends are Chinese. So I'll say the short term transition was a little bit difficult, but the long term was quite worth it. And we're really, really glad our kids are now kind of part of local society and have local friends.
What difficulties does your child face as a foreigner in China?
In fact, my son is only facing one difficulty, that is being different among his counterparts. I feel like if anybody is going to be moving to China with their kids, I think if the kids know that they are not Chinese, I don't see any difficulties unless they are facing some tensions in schools and maybe kindergarten. But I also feel that if you are coming here as a parent and you're going to be teaching here, and if you're so lucky that you teach in the same school where your kids are, they're going to have a comfortable life as students there because of the respect you'll be earning, you the parent, you'll be getting from the students around you. But if your kids are going to be if you are going to send your kids to a public school, I think you should have that great concern about the differences between your child and the classmates or the schoolmates. Those are notable differences. Either it will be skin color or it will be the language difficulties. I think you should pay more closely attention to such things because there are things that happens in schools, and you also have to develop a good relationship with your child to get to know some of these difficulties. If you have a chance, you guys, you can go on to my channel. You can see some of the videos that I have addressed concerning the difficulties and the challenges that kids may face in China that may also end up affecting you as a parent. So you have to really take great concern on that, realize your surroundings.
Any advice you'd give parents who are considering moving to China?
What advice can I give parents that are considering coming to China with their kids? If you're coming with your kids and they cannot speak Chinese or read and write Chinese, then putting them in a Chinese school is really not an option, I think. Unless they're really small, like kindergarten, they can go with the flow then. If you're got like 8, 9 years old and you're putting them in a Chinese school, it's going to be really hard to keep up because the pace here is real fast. So you're basically looking at private schools and international schools, and they are expensive. So be prepared to pay a lot. Or let your company pay if that's an option, or you can be a teacher, teach at the school, and then your child can go for free. That's another very smart option. Other than that, advice, well, be also prepared to be instantly famous here, because everyone is gonna call out Laowai to you, which means foreigner. They're not saying it in a negative way. It's more like lots of people have never seen a foreigner before, especially kids. They will point you out. So I don't mind that. For me, it's fine. I don't even hear it anymore. I really don't care about it. But in the beginning, when we just came to China, I was like, whoa, everyone's like waving, pointing, they're super friendly. I was like, oh my God, I feel like Michael Jackson or something. So be prepared for that extra attention. Other than that, I think it is a really, really good decision, or it would be a great adventure for you to try and come to China and, give it a go.
And my advice to the people who are coming to China and who has future planning to live here in China is you can definitely come to China. It's a good opportunity for you and your kid as well to learn the different culture, learn different family values, and learn the innovative thing. As you know, China is very good in innovation. So when your kid grown up, he can learn to the modern and new innovative things.
I'd say for us, it's definitely the positives outweigh the negatives. We love the cultural experience. We love the language. We love new foods. We love seeing new night markets and shopping. All that stuff is ultra great. But what you need to be thinking about as a parent is your schooling for your kids. If you're in elementary school, high school, you're going to have to think about what is your education system for your kids. And the answer for most foreigners is either homeschool or paying for international school. Now, international school is a very good education, but it's very expensive. In China, you have some of the most elite, some of the most expensive schools in the whole world at 200,000 to 300,000 renminbi. That's 30,000 to 50,000 US dollars per year per student. That's a big cost. Coming from a normal salary that, maybe where you make $50,000 to $100,000 a year. So unless you have a job that provides for your kids' school, I'd highly recommend thinking about that cost before you move here. The other thing is you can homeschool, and some foreigners do that. You're not going to have the amount of resources here available, but there is the internet in China, and a lot of homeschool is internet-based. But that's usually going to mean that one parent is at home homeschooling while the other parent is working. Some parents make that work as far as jobs, but if you have two separate jobs, that's not going to work for your homeschool career. The other thing you want to think about is your community structure. And a lot of people end up moving to China as an international school teacher and kind of end up teaching international school, which is a great gig. Often their kids get free tuition into the international school, so that's good. Or maybe they take a job as an engineer or in a big corporate office, also great. But then they kind of end up in a little bit of a foreigner bubble, which is, if that's what you want to be in China, that's totally cool. But a lot of foreigners end up kind of only associating with foreigners and only working and living with foreigners in the same apartment and the same job for a long time, which means they just don't get the access to the language, the culture, the food. So I would highly recommend structure your life in a way that you can have local friends, that you can be in a local neighborhood. You're not just in an all foreign oriented apartment complex, which may be more comfortable in the short term, but I recommend putting yourself out there a little bit and not being one of those foreigners necessarily that are in China for 20 years and don't speak any Chinese. Now, my Chinese isn't perfect, but being in a city with so few foreigners, it has forced me to engage the local language and the local people, and that has been one of the most challenging, but also one of the most rewarding things is to have local friends, to be able to go and order local food and to really feel what it is like to be a local in a place rather than just a tourist. So highly recommend just kind of trying to make yourself as indigenous as possible. Of course, you'll always kind of be seen as a Laowai or foreigner in China by the locals, but just I think it's very rich and an enriching experience to be part of a local community.
I can say, as a teacher myself, when my child was in kindergarten, I was fortunate enough to have him in the same school I am teaching, and then I never faced any problems, like I said, because I was around him. So my child was just being treated just like any other child. Now that he is in elementary school and is away from me, I can't really say he is being treated fairly and stuff. There are so many challenges that you may have to find out when you are on the position. And I'm not speaking for everybody else. I know schools are different, and the rules that are imposed in schools pertaining certain things are different. So it all depends. Again, it all depends, but pay more attention to your child, develop good communications with your child, try to ask or be friendly. Don't be hard on your child. Then they can open up to you and tell you what's happening and do they like it or they're coping up. Be an observant parent. Surely you adapt and enjoy it here.
I hope you found this video insightful, and as always, thanks for watching.